Okay guys, welcome to Pheas Airsoft. Today I'm going to be doing a how-to video on how to downgrade this MC51 from JING GONG, otherwise known as a T3 MC51. Now obviously if you watched my previous video you will see me unboxing this great little device, and I said I would show you a downgrade. It should be an image on your screen now that shows the previous FPS, which was 371. Obviously that's far too high for UK sites, so I'm going to downgrade it using a Garda SP90 spring, because the intention is that this is going to be my little CQB weapon. So I wanted a lower spring in it for lower FPS. I don't want to hurt people, and obviously the easier spring should up my rate of fire a little bit as well. So this is the spring we're going to fit today. So obviously to get started then, make sure that the magazine is out, obviously that it's not been loaded, and clear it out. Next job is to remove the battery, so pop the pin out, remove the pin, the handguard slides forward and off, get those out of the way. Now from here on out it's generally pretty much the same for a normal G3 as it is for this stubby version. So first job is we're going to remove the stock cap. So we do that. I've got two screws here, flat-headed screws. I'm just going to put my finger in the other side so that the screw doesn't push through and just turn. So I'll remove that, push it through a little bit so I can remove both sides. So there's one. What I like to do is just to make sure I don't lose anything is obviously just screw it back together and leave it to one side. Now do the other one. And push that out as well. The screws are a little bit stiff in there, so nice to see that they're well tractioned in. So that's both screws removed. So that should now just wiggle itself off. So that's just slid clean off and out of the way, and I can get that out of the way. So inside here you should be able to see there's various wires and things, so I'm just going to pull that wiring loom out. So that's the end of the wiring. There's the fuse, if your fuse does pop, and in there you should be able to see there is a Phillips head screw and there's a mini tamiya. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to disconnect the mini tamiya. That's where the battery wire from the handguard feeds into the back of the gearbox. So I'm just going to disconnect those and pull that out of the way, and then I'm going to get my Phillips head and I'm going to undo that screw in there. Now tip that up, there's the Phillips screw, and this plate will slide out, making it easier to get to the gearbox. Next stage what we're going to do is we're going to come to the mag release system here. So I'm just going to put my flat blade in, push it out, and loosen it up. That drops that out again. Do note that this is significantly smaller than the ones out of the stock, so obviously don't try and get them mixed up, otherwise things won't work properly. I'm then going to come to the end of the pistol grip and we'll remove the base plate. Now when you're removing this base plate, be careful because there's often like a little metal disc in there that sits between the adjustment screw that's in here and the motor, so that you can adjust your motor to sit better with your gearbox. I'm just going to remove one screw and the other. Now you should be able to see, hopefully, that that is coming up because this motor is sat on a spring. So I'm just going to lift that up, and hopefully there's a little metal disc that will only go on one way round, so make sure you check the orientation. There's a little metal disc, got that out of the way. Now I'm going to lift the connectors off the wire, black at the back, red at the front, and if you can see the motor has got a red dot on that contact and a red nothing on that one, so you can see, tell the difference between the panels. So I'm just going to lift my motor out with a little bit of jiggling. So I just had to get some pliers then, because this motor is not wanting to come out very easily, so I'm just going to grab it on the end and wiggle it. There we go, and the motor came out. Now it looks like the spring has stayed inside. It has. I'll just get that out as well. There's the spring, so that sits on the end of the motor. I would be careful, these are extremely high power magnets, so please try not to put it near your phone and other electronics, because it could very well likely break it up. So inside here now we've got two Phillips head screws in the bottom of the pistol grip, which I'm just going to remove. There's no real difference in which one you remove first, as long as you remove them both. So there's one. There's quite a lot of grease in here. It's one of the things with Chinese gearboxes, is there tends to be a lot of grease packed into them. And there's the other one. So that's out of the way. This should now be ready to come off. I'm just going to remove this screw because the selector runs through a cam through the gearbox. So I'm just going to get a fine little Phillips. I'm going to undo this screw here. Again, be careful you don't lose that, because that is very fine, and that now will just pull out. So there's your fire selector, so I'll get that out of the way. Now this should just wiggle. There's a pistol grip, lovely. The connectors down there just need poking back through the hole, so obviously the black came back out of the bottom, the back hole, and the red to the front hole. Now this should hopefully just slide on backwards out to the front. So before we get into actually doing the gearbox itself, just a side note, you can also get the barrel out from here now. So if I push here, the barrel will slide out all the way out like that, and allow me to change the hot rubber, change the barrel, clean, that kind of thing. Although that said, you can clean it in situ as well. So for now, get those out of the way, and we're onto the gearbox. Now when I remove it from this plastic frame, there's a little cam in here that you just need to be careful of, because you will need it. So what I like to do is I flip it over and I bring it out like that. Now there's the button from this side. That's absolutely fine, we need to keep that safe, and there's a little screw still, and then you'll see in here, if I bring it out, there is a little cam. Now this little piece here sits inside here to control the firing mode of your gun, and it's important we keep hold of that, otherwise your gun's not going to have selective fire. So then we have a version 2 gearbox, very well solidly made, using, it looks like, torque screws. So switch to my torque screws. You can see it's quite a thick chunky spring. Let's see if I can find the right one. I think so. That's slightly larger size. Let's get rid of these. Now generally I find with version 2 gearboxes, this first screw tends to be a little bit different size to the others, but not always, so it's a good idea just to keep them in the order that you took them out, so that you know where everything came from when you are putting it all back. So next one out. Third one out. Next one. Now the ones across the top are slightly bigger sizing, so I'm just going to switch my torque screw in a second. So finish this last screw, and then we'll get this sorted. Hopefully that one. Perfect. So at the minute, once I've finished doing this, it will still stay together, but it is under compression, so we need to release that compression very carefully. So what I've always done is got a screwdriver and jammed it in the back to hold down the spring guide. So in here is the spring and the spring guide. If we hold those down with a screwdriver, they will not then hopefully fire out the spring and the spring guide across my room. potentially damaging people or other things. So I'm just going to take a screwdriver, push it in the back there. There is a hole, that's where the screw came from that held that into the back. So I'm just going to hold that down. I'm going to push down, and then I'm going to slowly just lift the top part of the gearbox up, just pry it a little bit. Doesn't want to give. There we go. So it's popped up, keeping that down, and then what I'm slowly going to do is lift that up like that. There we go. Now that is a little bit bizarre. I've seen like that before. So I'm going to take that out. This is the spring now. As sometimes happens, the spring is integral to attached to the actual piston. So what we're going to have to do is I'll lift the top plate off there, remove the piston, and there is a top screw in the header there. So if I undo that, both sides, perfect. This is covered in grease. We'll remove this. Looks like it's been thread locked in. Now remove that, and what I should be able to do now is pull out the spring and this little container thing. Now what we need to do is we need to get this back in there. So I'm just going to drop it in down there, and then I'm going to use a screwdriver to hold that in place on one end whilst I put the screw back in, just because that little bit of metal in the screw will keep the piston head on, and obviously we need the piston head to stay on so that the gun does its job properly. So if I can get those lined up, there we go, screwed back in. There we go, just clean that up a little bit, there's a little bit of debris around. And then job's a good one. So what we can do is, while we're in here, is if we very carefully lift up the tappet plate like that, what we can do is, if we push our piston in and put our finger over the end here, so I've taken the air nozzle and the tappet plate off, we can then hold our finger there and test the compression. Now I can't get that very far, so obviously there is some excellent compression in there, so I am quite happy that that has got good compression in there. So I'm going to chuck that back on, and I'm going to reattach this little spring, and I'm going to hang it over there. Now there is a little notch just in there, and before I do that, let's move that back around again. So what happens is this little notch here pulls back on this thing that pulls the piston in and out to let a BB in and out, and then obviously as the spring is released back forward again, that compresses the air down the barrel and pushing the BB out the end and on towards an enemy. So I'm just going to put that spring on there and push that back so it clicks in like that. Now to test that's in the right place, that should hopefully spring backwards and forwards like that. As it does, again, triggers in the right place. So I'm now going to open up my new spring. Now that's got quite a bit of force behind it. This one should be far easier to compress. So there's my new spring. So I'm just going to make sure that that one's lined up. Slide that in. Now it's important that it's in a regular pitch spring, so you can see that there's tighter compression here and tighter compression here, and then wider in other areas. This tightest compression at the end needs to go on the spring guide, otherwise you get erratic FPS and things. So that's ready in. Now I've just got one gear to put back in place, which is this one, and the cut-off lever. Now these are notoriously tricky at times, particularly with so much grease about, to get in the right position and stay in the right position. So if I put that in and pull that to the side and drop, oops, position that little shim back in place. The shim is a tiny little washer that seats the gears up or down inside the gearbox, just to ensure better engagement between them all and not too movement. Otherwise you'll find that you have to adjust your motor a lot. Now look to have got that secured down, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to push that spring in and hold it down. So I'm going to hold all that down now whilst I bring in the other side of the gearbox, and I'm going to very carefully drop that back on. Now it's not fully locked back down, so what I need to do is just wiggle up that little bit of, and then it is clicked shut, and now it's ready for me to screw it all back together again. Obviously just repeating the exact same procedure again. We screw it all back together, we reassemble all of the gun, making sure that we put all the parts back in the right place, and then things are great. So I'll show you an image in a moment of the afterwards FPS and a few more shots of the gun itself. Thanks a lot, bye.